He was sitting on a
There you
park
go,
bench
all
with a
ready for your
coffee he
big
had stopped
day.
tasting 20 minutes ago,
Remember to listen to your
watching the
teacher,
leaves
okay?
come down in the
right here to pick you
particular
up.
unhurried way they come down in October when there is no wind, just gravity, just time doing what time does. He was not thinking about anything specific. That was the whole point of the bench. He came here on Saturday mornings when his mind needed somewhere to be that was not the apartment, not the office, not the inside of the grief he had been carrying for 2 years, and had become so accustomed to that he sometimes forgot it was grief and thought it was just him now, just the shape he had become. He was thinking about nothing. Then 4 small girls in matching green coats and matching olive beanies stopped in front of him, and the one closest looked at his arm and pointed and said the sentence that stopped the world. "Our mom has a tattoo just like yours." He looked at the little girl. He looked at the tattoo on his forearm, the one he had gotten 11 years ago, the one that was not a common design, not something from a flash sheet, but something specific and personal that he had drawn himself on a night when he was 27, and feeling something he could not put into words and had put into ink instead. He looked at the 4 little girls. He froze. Before we begin, if you believe that the world is smaller and stranger and more generous than it appears on any ordinary Saturday morning, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to feel something true today. His name was Owen Calloway. He was 38 years old, and he had a tattoo on his right forearm that he had designed himself at 27 out of 3 elements that mattered to him in a way he had never fully explained to anyone. A compass with a broken needle, a single stem with no flower, a small bird in mid-flight, not arriving, not leaving, simply between. He had gone to a tattoo artist named Marco, who had looked at the sketch for a long time before saying, "This is the saddest happy thing I have ever been asked to put on someone." Owen had said, yeah. Marco had said, "I'll do it right." He had. Owen had worn that tattoo for 11 years. Hundreds of people had seen it. A handful had asked about it. Nobody had ever said anything that made him feel it had been truly seen until a 7-year-old girl in a park pointed at it and said those 8 words. He was sitting very still. The 4 girls were watching him with the patient, assessing expression of children who have asked an adult a question and are waiting to see whether the adult will answer honestly or do the thing adults sometimes do, which is give a different answer than the one the question deserved.
He said, "Your mom has the same one."
The girl who had pointed said, "Not the same, similar same. The bird is different. Her bird is landing." He felt something move in his chest that he could not immediately name. He said, "What's your mom's name?" A woman's voice behind the girls said, "Girls, come here please, right now." He looked up. She was walking toward them fast from the direction of the playground, her long hair moving behind her, her face carrying the specific expression of a parent who has lost visual contact with 4 children for 90 seconds and has done the calculation of everything that could have gone wrong in 90 seconds. She reached the girls and put her hands on the nearest 2 by instinct, the checking hands, the we are all here and accounted for hands. She looked at Owen. He looked at her. She looked at his arm. The park did not go quiet. Parks don't. Children were still shouting somewhere behind her, and a dog was moving through the leaves, and the city continued at its ordinary volume. But something went quiet anyway. She said, "Where did you get that?" He said, "I drew it. 11 years ago. I had it done by a guy named Marco on Clement Street." She said Marco retired. He said, "I heard that." She looked at him. He looked at her. The 4 girls looked at both of them with the bright, interested attention of children who understand that something is happening that is above their current level of information but below their threshold for boredom. She said, "I'm Nora." He said, "Owen." She said, "Your bird is between." He said, "Yours is landing." She sat down on the bench. Not because she had decided to, not because she had thought it through, simply because her legs had done the thing legs do when the body needs a moment and the nearest horizontal surface is right there. The girls arranged themselves around the bench in the way of children who have identified that the adults are going to talk now and have decided to allow it while remaining in the immediate vicinity in case anything interesting happens. Her name was Nora Callahan. She was 36 years old, and she had 4 daughters named Willa, June, Bee, and Rue, who were 7 years old and identical in the way that makes strangers stop on the street and stare, which her daughters had been subjected to their entire lives and had developed a collective policy toward that ranged from patient tolerance to theatrical annoyance depending on the day and who was doing the staring. She had gotten the tattoo 8 years ago, 6 months after her husband had left. Not in anger, but in the quiet, devastating way of someone who had decided that the life he was living was not the one he wanted, and had said so with a clarity she had eventually learned to respect, even though at the time it had felt like being handed a door and told to find somewhere else to stand. She had been 28 years old with infant quadruplets, and a marriage that had just become a co-parenting arrangement and a sense of her own future that had gone completely illegible overnight. She had gotten the tattoo because she needed to put something permanent on her body that belonged only to her and meant something only she had chosen. She had sketched it herself, a compass with a broken needle, a single stem with no flower, a bird coming into land. She had gone to Marco on Clement Street because a friend had recommended him. He had looked at her sketch for a long time. He had said, "This is the saddest happy thing I have ever been asked to put on someone." She had stared at him. She had said, "Someone else said that to you." He had said once, a few years ago. She had said, "What did you tell them?" He had said that I'd do it right. She sat on the bench in the October park and looked at Owen's arm and then at his face and thought about Marco saying the same words to 2 strangers years apart, and neither of them knowing and both of them walking out of his shop with ink on their arms that came from the same place even though they had never met. She said the broken compass. He said for the time when you don't know where you're going. She said the stem with no flower. He said for the thing that hasn't happened yet. She said the bird. He said between, still figuring it out. She said mine is landing. He said so you figured it out. She looked at her 4 daughters who were now investigating a pile of leaves with the focused collaborative energy of a small research team. She said I figured out the most important part. The rest I'm still working on. He nodded. Before we go further, we want to stop here, because this bench, this morning, this meeting that felt like something other than coincidence, did not happen in a vacuum. It happened because of a chain of small decisions made by ordinary people who will never know what they set in motion. There was a woman named Sylvie who had been Nora's neighbor in the difficult first year after the separation. Sylvie had 3 children of her own and no extra hours in her day and had nonetheless appeared at Nora's door every Thursday evening for 6 months with a container of food and the offer to sit with the baby so Nora could shower and sleep and be a person for 40 minutes. She had never announced this as a kindness. She had just knocked on Thursday and kept knocking. Nora had gone to that park every Saturday for 4 years because a pediatrician named Dr. Huang had told her once offhandedly between appointments that children who have outdoor unstructured time on a regular basis develop a quality of ease that indoor children often have to work to find later. It was a small thing to say. Nora had written it down and built a Saturday around it and had never missed one in 4 years. Dr. Huang did not know she had created a Saturday ritual. She had just said a thing she believed. There was a man named Felix who ran the coffee cart near the park entrance and had been making Owen's Saturday coffee for 2 years and had started adding an extra shot 6 months ago, without being asked, because he had noticed Owen arriving tired on Saturdays in the way people arrive tired when the week has been long and the weekend has not yet offered anything restorative. Felix never mentioned the extra shot. Owen had never asked why the coffee had started tasting better. Sylvie's Thursday visits put Nora back together enough to keep going. Dr. Huang's offhand comment built the Saturday. Felix's extra shot put Owen on the bench long, enough to still be sitting there when 4 girls in green coats walked past. None of them knew each other. None of them knew they were arranging anything. They were just people being decent to other people in the small, daily, unremarkable ways that turn out not to be unremarkable at all. This is what Kindness Tales is built for. They talked for an hour. Not about the tattoo after the first few minutes. About the daughters who were called Willa, June, Bee, and Rue, which Owen said was either a folk album or a law firm, and Nora laughed in a way that used her whole face. About his work, which was carpentry and joinery, custom furniture, the kind of work where you spend a long time with a piece of wood understanding what it wants to be before you decide what to make it. About her work, which was occupational, therapy at a pediatric clinic 3 days, a week, and raising 4 children the other 4. About what it is like to be alone in the way that is not lonely exactly, but is aware of its own particular weight. About grief, not dramatically, just the way 2 people talk about grief, when they have both carried it long enough to have stopped being afraid of the word. He told her about the 2 years. She did not ask what the 2 years meant. She understood from the way he said it, that it meant the kind of 2 years that has a before and an after, and that the after is where he was now, still finding its shape. She told him about the 4 years. He understood from the way she said it, that it had been harder and better than it sounded, and that she had become someone she respected more on the other side of it. The girls came back periodically to report on the leaves and then returned to their investigation. Willa, who was the one who had pointed at the tattoo, came back at one point and stood beside Owen and looked at his arm again with the focused attention of someone verifying a memory. She said, "Yours is a better bird." He said, "Yours is a braver one." She considered this seriously. She said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because landing takes more courage than flying." She looked at her mother, then back at him. She said, "Mom says that too." She went back to the leaves. Nora was looking at him. He was looking at her. Neither of them said anything for a moment because there was nothing that needed to be said immediately, and they had both learned in their separate ways the value of not filling a silence that is doing useful work. Then Rue, who was the youngest by 4 minutes and operated on a separate timeline from her sisters, appeared at the bench and said she was hungry and that they had been in the park for a very long time, and could they please go to the place with the good soup? Nora said, "In a minute." Rue said, "You always say in a minute." Nora said, "Because it's always true." She looked at Owen. She said, "There's a place on the corner. They make good soup, if you don't have somewhere to be." He looked at his coffee, which was empty, which it had been for 30 minutes. He said, "I don't have anywhere to be." They walked out of the park together, the 4 girls moving ahead in the loose formation of children who know the way and feel no need to wait for the adults. The 2 of them walking at the pace of people who are in the middle of a conversation and are not in any particular hurry to reach the end of it. The leaves came down around them in the particular unhurried way of October when there is no wind. Just gravity. Just time doing what time does. And sometimes, if you are sitting on the right bench at the right moment with the right tattoo on your arm, something else. Something that 4 small girls in matching green coats and matching olive beanies set in motion simply by stopping and pointing and saying the truest thing they knew. If this story stayed with you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to believe in something unexpected and real today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of connection, courage, and the quiet moments that change everything. Because sometimes the universe arranges things, and sometimes it uses 7-year-olds to do it. Welcome to Kindness Tales. We are so glad you are here.